It's time for Lefties Losing It, and let's start with a particularly toxic brand of Christianity that appears to be devoid of God and goodness, but full of hate and loathing. Here is Atlanta preacher and far-left lunatic Jamal Bryant dehumanising half the country by calling Republicans roaches.
Roaches only start running when you turn the lights on. As long as the lights are out, they gonna be comfortable eating your cereal. Y'all ain't saying nothing, climbing in your cupboard. But when you turn the light on, all of the roaches gotta start moving. I came to give a warning. Elon Musk, the light is getting ready to come on. Donald Trump, the light is getting ready to come on. J.D. Vance, the light is getting ready to come on. MAGA, the light is getting ready to come on. Welcome, because the roaches will check in, but they won't check out. The lights are coming on.
Really, we need to seriously consider making asylums great again. And in case you thought this was an isolated incident, this preacher is notorious for bile-filled race-baiting rants.
I feel bad for them in the White House who are in there tap dancing for massa, wearing bow ties, shinning and grinding, laughing like nothing is funny. But I ain't afraid of the spooks that sat at the door. These runaway slaves hiding in the White House.
Talking about race-obsessed simpletons, let's hear from singer John Legend. First, he says he wants Trump to be the comforter-in-chief, like the leader of the free world is supposed to be some sort of therapist for Lefties Losing It. And then he goes into a demented diatribe about white supremacy.
Be a comforter-in-chief, you know?
Why do you think that he's latched on to diversity so much?
Oh, he's a bigot, so. It's a belief that there's a hierarchy of racial groups and that his group is superior, genetically superior. He believes that.
Right.
Whenever he talks about competence and qualifications, any white man will do for him. Look at the last guy who was Secretary of Defense. He was a 4-star general, supremely qualified black man. And then see who he puts in after him. That's the level of bigotry that he has. Any white man is better than that.
What a contemptible liar he is. You want to know why America is divided? It's clowns like him. And talking about clowns, it's been a while since we heard from this dude. Dylan Mulvaney now claims that he told his mother he was born in the wrong body when he was just 4.
Came out to my mom at age 4 as a girl. And
what did you say?
I said, I think God made a mistake and put a girl into a boy's body. And, you know, she said, God doesn't make mistakes. But, you know, a number of years later, we made it to where we needed to be.
Now, watch here as journalist Natalie Winters well and truly puts this CNN hack in his place when he questions whether Natalie is a real journalist.
To the people, and I'm sure you see this online every single day, who say you don't deserve to be here because you're not a real journalist. What's your response to them?
Well, I'm pretty sure the group of people in there spent, 4 years covering for someone who was essentially dead, and that's being charitable in my description of him, a president by the name of Joe Biden. So to all those people who are apoplectic over having new media voices, you guys failed, and that's why we're here.
Joining me now is political commentator and author of the new book, The Children We Left Behind, Adam B Coleman. Adam, Natalie Winters makes an excellent point there. Journalists have lost the public's trust. So many journalists from the mainstream media who were complicit in the cover-up of Joe Biden's cognitive decline.
Yeah, Natalie makes a great point that basically the media is not representing the people. You know, what they're trying to do in that CNN piece is basically trying to spit on new media, trying to discredit them. They're trying to show that the old guard, like the CNNs, like the MSNBCs and so on, the NBC News, they're the ones who are deserving of having the honor of being in the White House. But the old guard cares about the old guard's institution more than it cares about actually reporting what is going on and being fair with their reporting to the American public. So what Natalie's expressing is what a lot of Americans have thought for a long time, which is why they're turning to new media, which is why they're getting their news elsewhere instead of turning on the television, going to the New York Times. They're coming to alternative media sources because it's far more honest, at least somewhat reliable.
And these alternative media sources are gaining enormous audiences. You look at some of the numbers listening to podcasts and others like Natalie, and really you look at the MSNBC audience, the CNN audience, they're being left behind. And sticking with the media and why trust in the mainstream media has plummeted to record lows, the executive producer of 60 Minutes, Bill Owens, has resigned. He blames the supposed loss of independence. Now, this comes after President Trump's $10 billion lawsuit, after claims that 60 Minutes grossly misedited an interview with Kamala Harris during the election campaign at the direction of the Harris campaign. Now, we were among the first to report on that deliberate misleading edit. Let's just have a quick look. This is how Kamala answered a question.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
Typical incoherent, meandering word salad with no substance there from Kamala. But look at what 60 Minutes actually put to air.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Sharp, succinct, strong, and really, Adam, incredible antics there from 60 Minutes. And for the executive producer to blame loss of independence for his resignation is almost comical. They have acted as the Democrats' propaganda arm for years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's obviously with long pieces that 60 Minutes does, they have to do some editing, but that's a massive edit. That is trying to do the best that they can, which she's not even really answering the question. They just had it in a very coherent, short statement. And it just covers up how grossly unprepared she was to run for president. And to be sort of fair to her, she only had a few months to run. She was pushed into the spotlight to run after Joe Biden was too senile to actually move forward. But if they listen to the American public and stop trying to say, well, if we are fair about the cognitive decline of Joe Biden, it helps Trump. But that's not what the media is there for. They're not there to pick winners and losers. They're there to tell us who's winning and who's losing.
Absolutely. Now let's check in with MSNBC, where host Symone Sanders Townsend claims that Black Americans will be the next to be deported. She seems to think that Black citizens are somehow going to be part of the deportation program.
To me, that is why Kilmar Abrego Garcia's specific case, the case of the gentleman who's a makeup artist out of California who was also sent to that prison. That is why the 75% of the folks who have been sent, the men who have been sent there that don't have criminal records, that is why this is so important. Because if they could do it to them, if they could snatch students off the street without any pushback or recourse, they will do it to any of us. And to be very clear, it's going to be the people of color and vulnerable communities that are next in line.
I think that's right. And that's certainly part of why the African-American community is so strongly behind the supporting Kilmar.
Yeah, we're like, we are not for this.
Yeah, because as you just said, if they're going to whisk them away, what are they going to do with us?
There you go, Coleman. Are you living in fear of ICE knocking on your door and deporting you despite the fact that you are a citizen?
No, I'm not. And what he just said, that the Black community is behind, no. Black leftists are behind this, which is a very small percentage of Black Americans that live in this country, especially the upper class types who appear on MSNBC. So this fear-mongering about Black Americans being scared, guess what? When you show Black Americans the facts about this guy being associated with gangs, this guy, which everyone acknowledges he was here illegally, Black Americans know what illegal immigration has done to their jobs. Black Americans have seen their neighborhoods being torn apart, being split up, being segregated because of illegal immigration. So this idea that Black Americans are behind Kilmar is foolishness. It's ridiculous. So no, Black Americans aren't as stupid as they're projecting us to be, that we're hanging in fear that ICE is going to knock on our door when the vast majority of Black Americans have been here longer than any other demographic. So no, we're not going anywhere and we're not scared. This is all just nonsense.
Now, I've played a little of Jamal Bryant, preacher Jamal Bryant in Lefties Losing It. He's a repeat offender in that regard. He's attacked Black Republicans in the past in the most racist terms. And now this man of God is calling Republicans roaches, Adam. Tell me about this brand of Christianity and how much influence it has amongst the Black community.
Well, in certain areas, you know, I believe he's based in Atlanta. In certain areas, he has a lot of influence, unfortunately. But if you were to see the image from that video at the podium, what is it? It's a communist fist holding the cross, right? Which is blasphemous. This is not something that should be allowed or should be accepted. But he is part of what they call Black liberation theology, which is essentially a front for Black Marxism, right? So they uphold civil rights and all these cliche terms, but they also talk about capitalism and the bad parts of capitalism and all these different things. It centers Black identity in front of Christ. And I say this as a Christian, that whenever you try to serve two masters, you're not going towards Christ, you're going towards something else. So Jamal Bryant, he may be renowned and people love this man, but what they don't realize is that he's using the Black American he's basically using the image of Black Americans as a skin suit to further Marxist ideas or Marxist-like ideas. So no, I do not support what he has to say. And especially when you have churches getting highly involved in politics for their own personal gain, that is not what they're there for. The house of God is there to push people towards Christ, not towards the Democratic Party.
Well said. Now, before you go, tell me about your new book, The Children We Left Behind. It's a deeply personal work and highlights cultural issues in the West around family separation. Have we lost our willingness to sacrifice for our children, Adam?
I think many of us have. You know, in the Western world, we glorify individualism. And I'm a proponent of individualism, but as long as it's healthy and it's balanced, too much of a good thing can become a bad thing, obviously. But as parents, we're supposed to sacrifice. We're supposed to sacrifice for our children. The problem that I'm seeing is that our obsession with individualism intersects with our need to sacrifice for our children. And so parents get to act like children, be whimsical, do whatever they want to do, drag their kids along. And as they're dragging their kids, they expect their children to respond like adults. And that's not how things are supposed to work. So yes, the book is a cultural critique about the selfishness of parents, but it's also to talk about my story as a child who was left behind by my father and what I had to deal with: suicidal ideation, depression, being admitted into a mental hospital, homelessness, poverty. All of these different things all stemmed from family separation, not having him there, having my mother struggle to take care of two kids. So these are real circumstances that a lot of Americans, and actually throughout the Western world especially, are facing.